Thank you, everyone. We will be back in session, and thank you, Representative Nichols. We have verified that the link is back on to our legislative website and things are working. So if there are any other questions, please be sure to let us know. When we left off, we were going to go to the testimony portion of the hearing. And at this point, I'd like to invite somebody in the audience, Rob Sauer, to come up and testify. Please state your name, where you live, and we're going to have 2 minutes for testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Rob Sauer. I'm the superintendent of the Homedale School District. I've been superintendent in Homedale for 11 years. I'm also the president of the Idaho State Superintendents Association. First, relating to the tax relief, the Homedale School District is located in Owyhee and Canyon counties. For those that don't know, the rebates to families are very much needed. Many of our families struggle. We have many of our parents who commute to various parts of the Treasure Valley for work, and the incredibly high fuel costs, among other pieces of inflation, are very difficult for our families. So that would be a welcome relief. As far as the educational investment and what it could mean for school districts, particularly our district, the Homedale School District is one of the few school districts in Idaho without a supplemental levy. Like others, we want to make sure we have the best staff possible in every part of our system. When classified staff start at $12 per hour, it makes it tough to compete. We are trying to make gains. We raised our starting classified wages from $8.52 to $10 to $12 in the last 2 years. When I was in high school and junior college at CSI in Twin Falls, I worked at Clear Springs Trout Company and was making $6.50 an hour. That was 31 years ago. We haven't made it very far. The educational investments before you are vital for us to continue to make the needed gains in classified pay. Pick a major boulevard in Idaho and look at what many of the fast food chains are advertising to start. We're not competing very well with that. In the last year, our power costs and our non-transportation fuel costs for our district have gone up a combined $31,000. That's a 24% increase for power and 28% for fuel without an increase in discretionary funds to cover that. We are one of the districts in the state that made the switch to the state insurance plan. This will be an incredible move for our staff. We feel like we're moving from basically having catastrophic insurance to a really good plan.
10 seconds.
This is a heavy lift financially. The move to the state plan increases the district contribution $160,000 per year, which is an additional 46%. The state support to make the move is very much needed, but as we know, there's still a financial gap that our district will continue to shoulder each year.
I'm going to have to ask you to rhyme it. Thank you very much. Do you have any questions for Mr. Sauer? Comments? Thank you very much for testifying. Next, I'd like to invite Fred Birnbaum to come up and testify. Thank you, Fred. Tell us.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of this joint committee. My name is Fred Birnbaum with the Idaho Freedom Foundation, and this morning I will briefly reprise my role as skeleton at the feast. I think it's a good idea to give people's money back, and so I'm not going to speak to the tax portion, except I think it could have been more generous with the $2 billion surplus, and perhaps more balanced to ongoing as opposed to one time. There could have been other changes. But I do think it's important for the record for people to understand how much, prior to this bill, education funding as appropriated by the legislature has increased the last 2 years. For fiscal year 2021, $2.341 billion was appropriated. That's general funds, dedicated, and federal funds. The legislature does not appropriate local funds from property taxes, bonds, and levies. 2.341. 22, the number jumped to 3.109 billion, and then in fiscal 23, which just started and was appropriated at the end of last session, 3.318 billion. That is a 41.7% increase in education funding in 2 fiscal years. The reserve funds, these are funds held at the district, not by the state. Those total over $1 billion. And that's in total, all funds, all districts throughout the state. And that was as of the end of June 2021, because we don't have the 22 number. I imagine it's bigger given the appropriations. a ton of money has been put into schools. I believe that portion, the 410 million, the 330 and the 80 component, sends the wrong message in that it basically accepts the notion that we have somehow underfunded schools. Because again, this is in the last 2 fiscal years is a 977 million increase. Where has the money gone? What has it done to improve student outcomes? Thank you, and I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Birnbaum. Do we have any questions for Mr. Birnbaum? Seeing none, thank you very much. Let us have Alex LeBeau. I've got Alex online, or he's here. We'll have Alex LeBeau testify next. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Alex LeBeau. I'm the president of the Idaho Association of Commerce and Industry, and we're asking for your support of House Bill 1. And we want to thank the governor, and we want to thank all of you that have co-sponsored this legislation and worked on this legislation prior to coming up here to try and figure out a way to do the right thing for our citizens that are struggling at this point, dealing with inflation, as well as also trying to get some investments into education that are sorely needed, because as the previous speaker mentioned, we have been on the floor for a long time, and it takes a while to get off that floor so that we're no longer last. We can try and actually see some improvement moving forward. This legislation sets up Idaho not only for coping with inflation in the immediate future, but sets up Idaho for an opportunity that is unprecedented. We are thrilled to be here, to be supporting this with the ongoing flat tax, the way that this tax has been structured with the ongoing inflationary piece to ensure that all citizens will benefit associated with this is unprecedented. And we thank all of you that have worked on this to get us to this particular point in time. As far as looking forward prospectively from our K through 12, but especially through the higher ed and looking at those high in-demand jobs, I can tell you that all of our employers consider the jobs that they are looking for, the employees they are looking for, those are all high demand. And we are thrilled to see the investment into our education system to give our employers the opportunity to have our citizens come back to work and be in our shop floors and make Idaho better than it was just a few years ago. So thank you very much, and I'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Mr. LeBeau. Do we have any questions for Mr. LeBeau? Thanks for testifying.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
At this time, I would like to call Brian, I believe it says Alman, I'm sorry. Is Brian in the? Mr. Alman, please state your name, where you live, and
my name is Brian Allman. I am from Eagle, Idaho, and I am here on my own behalf. I am a Republican PC, and this is my first time before this body, so I appreciate this opportunity. I would actually like to testify in opposition to this bill. I think I speak for all Idahoans when I say that we do need something to help with this inflation that just continues getting worse and worse. It's making everything more expensive. And giving back the public their own tax dollars that we've apparently overpaid, I think that's a fantastic idea. However, I have to oppose the bill because it's tied together with more funding for education. As I listen to the proponents of the education investment talk, I feel like I'm in Groundhog Day. 2 years ago, the legislature made historic investments in our education system. And then last year in the previous session, we made historic, unprecedented investments in the education system. And now here we are in a special session, just a few weeks before the new elections, before a new session starts, and we're making another historic investment in education. And I have to wonder how often that's going to go. We're just putting more and more money into this pot. What's the goal with that? And why is it combined with these tax cuts and tax rebates? I just think the legislature, and I hope the legislature will take this opportunity, both in the House and the Senate, to ask some of these questions, to look closely at the bill instead of just, rubber stamping what's come down and really giving up the authority that we, the people, have given to you in the House and the Senate to make our laws. And I would ask that you, if not just completely oppose the bill, at least reconsider it, reconsider some of the provisions, take a closer look at it, ask why are we doing this now, why is it important, and is there perhaps a better way that we could help handle inflation for the citizens of Idaho? I think there are some great ideas out there, and I hope that the legislature will entertain them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allman. Do we have any questions for Mr. Allman? Thanks again for testifying. Appreciate it. At this time, the committee would like to call our Superintendent Ibarra, to testify. I think we all know who you are, but please give us your name and what you do.
Good morning, committee. For the record, Superintendent of Public Instruction Sherry Ibarra, and as you know, I'm from Mountain Home. It's a pleasure to see you one last time as I go out the door. I didn't know I was going to get this opportunity, so glad that you're back for me to say thanks for all of your service to Idahoans. I'm happy to support House Bill 1, this proposal being considered in this special session today. In addition to new funding for education, this proposal includes a much-needed tax relief of $500 million in tax rebates, coupled with a reduction of simplification of taxes. Government should not take from its citizens even a penny more that is needed to fully fund its operations. And I applaud the governor and the legislature for taking this step during this time of national economic distress, historic inflation, and potential recession. As for the $410 million of new support for education, I strongly encourage the Idaho Legislature to pass this historic bill, and I encourage voters to join me in supporting the related ballot question in the November election. The proposal targets $80 million at training for in-demand careers, which include teaching, nursing, and STEM professions, and among others. It adds $330 million annually to the existing public school income fund, which is much needed to address pressing needs such as maintenance and improvements to our school buildings and our infrastructure, as you've heard me talk about many times. And as you know, there's a teacher shortage right now as well. So this is really a step in the right direction. As superintendent for nearly 8 years, it's always been my goal to take Idaho to the top 10 for student achievement, and the passage of this legislation is the right step at the right time. It'll send a loud and clear message to Idahoans that education is a top priority, and that the naysayers will no longer be able to allege a lack of legislative support or effort, or the absence of widespread support for our public education system. House Bill 1 carries my strongest endorsement as the state's top advocate for K-12 education, and I urge you to support this bill. Thank you for your work.
Thank you, Superintendent. Do we have any questions for Superintendent Ibarra? Thank you, Superintendent. At this time, the committee would like to call Lyle Johnston. Are you here, Lyle? Thank you. Please state your name for the record, where you're from, and the floor is yours.
Lyle Johnstone, Eden, Idaho. Thank you for the committees having this hearing. I also would like to address inflation. Inflation generally brings recession, which means hard times. And the state being unable to quite budget correctly seems to have $2 billion extra dollars. I believe that the majority of that should go back to the taxpayers. As a special session, when we really needed one a couple of years ago, we couldn't get one. And now we're horsing around and we're going to dump more money future for years into education. And I, quite frankly, don't see the outcome coming out of education that we need. Scores aren't going up. So if this is a case of the tail wagging the dog, as in IACI, and corporations wanting a certain thing out of education, they seem to be getting it. But our students don't seem to be getting educated. That's the problem. So other than multi-topics in one bill, I believe that the legislature should be looking at returning 3/4 of that money back to the people this year and leave the 2023 legislative session to deal with if we're going to increase school spending, education spending, and put that in the laps of the new legislature that comes then, and not start promising money into the future when we don't even know what the economy is going to be like in 6 months. I'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. We appreciate it. Do we have any questions for Mr. Johnson? Thank you again for testifying. Next, we'd like to hear from Quinn Perry. Quinn, are you here? Please state your name, where you're from, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. For the record, my name is Quinn Perry, and I'm the Deputy Director for the Idaho School Boards Association. And I'm here today on behalf of the over 800 school board members who volunteer to serve their local school districts and charter schools. And we're here today in support of House Bill 1 and ask that each of you send it to your respective floors with a due pass recommendation. We know this legislation's purpose is to address inflation relief, and it does so by also recognizing that your local public schools are also facing inflation in today's economic conditions, whether that's the cost of gasoline to fuel school buses, the price of food to provide healthy school meals, paper products, labor, and other materials necessary all to serve kids. All of this is creating an issue for your local public schools, the same that it is for your citizens as well. However, we also recognize that this is an investment, and it is a historic one. And I know that that's been kind of weaponized today, but this is about our kids and our communities, both things that we know that you value the same that we do. And we know that the needs of every school district and charter school look different. The needs of Boundary County look very different than the needs in Salmon River and in Swan Valley. So we hope that all of us can work together to address the needs of our school districts strategically so that this really can make the best impact for our local public schools and for our kids in our community. Lastly, we'd like to thank the sponsors and to the governor for showing that you can provide relief to citizens while also investing in the future of Idaho by supporting our public schools. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Perry, and short on time. Appreciate it. Any questions for Ms. Perry?
Thank you.
Thank you very much for testifying. This time the committee would like to call Lorna Mitson. Lorna, are you here? Please state your name and where you're from, and the floor will be yours.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. My name is Lorna Mitson. I am from District 16, Garden City, and I represent myself and my family. I just wanted to say there's like 4 parts to this bill. The first one's giant wealth redistribution. I paid less than $750 in state taxes last year. I got a $75 refund earlier this year, and I would get a $600 refund under this. I oppose that tax rebate with the minimums. It is not right. Second, flat income tax, support, fully and wholly support. Thank you, Fred, for pointing out to the education for part 3. I don't support it. The school districts aren't underfunded, they're being mismanaged. The public school income fund is, and it's indiscriminate. We don't know how it's going to be used. I oppose. So question 4, from my understanding, the $80 million establishes a new thing. It demands an in-demand careers fund. And Representative Harris said, if the money is used properly, which means even he doubts that the money will actually be used properly, and I oppose that portion. Each one of you should have the opportunity to vote on each of these issues separately and oppose or reject each one individually. That is the spirit of the Constitution, even if the Attorney General says that it's okay, that with a really nice title, we can tie it all together. I also have a question about Prop 1. I would love to hear it addressed. Can Idahoans still vote to give even more money to education when they vote in November on Prop 1? And if they do vote to support Prop 1, does it undo what we've done here, or does this undo that, or what happens there? I don't understand that portion of the bill, and I'm finding it very confusing. And I also have the question of the timing that the previous gentleman brought up. for why this is happening. And then my last question was this September timeframe for getting this rebate. The question was, is that this September? Because that seems really key to influencing our election for the people who are on the ballot in November. And this seems like electioneering through legislation, in my opinion. Thank you. I stand for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Mitson. Any questions from the committee? Thanks again for testifying.
Thank you.
In an attempt to speed this up, when I call the next testifier, I'll let you know who's on deck, okay? So at this point, we're going to be hearing from Brian Kress. And after Brian, we'll have John Evans. Please state your name, where you're from, and the floor will be yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Brian Kress. I'm the superintendent of the Blackfoot School District and president of the Region 6 Superintendent's Association. May I begin by expressing my appreciation. The Blackfoot School District, our students, our parents, and our staff are grateful for the investments in K-12 education made by the legislature over the past few years. It has helped. If you were to ask any parent and or patron of Blackfoot School District, which role does Mr. Kress take most seriously, I am confident the vast majority would say he is a student advocate. He cares for our kids. Trust me, I'm a fierce student advocate. Well, today I'm here to advocate for all our kids. Governor Little has called for an historic investment in our future workforce. I 100% agree with that. However, I would like to reframe that as an historic investment in our kids. I have heard much about Idaho having the strongest economy in the nation. I am proud to be a very small part of that. For a second consecutive year, we are seeing an historic state surplus. And as we should, we will likely see a second straight year of an historic state income tax relief. Today, we have the opportunity to show our kids that they deserve more. They deserve better. It is my understanding today is not about specific line item funding. That will begin in January. Trust me, I will be back here again advocating for our kids. Please don't get caught up with all the nuts and bolts. We will get to that. We can squabble about line items, fund balances, accountability, and rightfully so, but we'll do that in January. Let's show our kids we believe in them. I urge you to vote in favor of House Bill 1. I urge you to invest in our future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kress. Do we have any questions for Mr. Kress? Thanks again for testifying. Mr. Evans. Please state your name and where you're from.
My name is John Evans, and I'm from Ada County. And the reason why we have a teacher shortage and student disenrollment, in 5, line 38, the estate tax should be revoked. People shouldn't have to pay taxes when they die, and the family shouldn't have to do it either. And I think property taxes should be abolished. And page 4, the 5.8, line 24, 5.8% should be reduced to 5%. Page 6, line 3 should be tax-free. Page 6, line 6 should be tax-free. Page 6, line 18 should be tax-free. And I'll stand for questions.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Evans. I appreciate it. Do we have any questions for Mr. Evans? Thanks again for testifying. We appreciate it. And I'm sorry, I didn't announce. Next, we're going to have Jackie Davidson. And after Jackie, we'll do Lane. I can't read that. McElhenney, is that correct? Lane? So Jackie, there you go.
Hi. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. Thank you so much. My name is Jackie Davidson. I am in Boise, Idaho, District 16, representing them. And I'd like to state that I'm in favor of the contents of this bill. However, I'd like to state for the record that according to the Idaho State Constitution, Article 3, Section 16, that every act shall embrace but one subject and matters properly connected therewith, which subject should be expressed in the title. And so the title to this bill has multiple subjects and should be separate bills. So as a legislature, everyone takes an oath to take to support the Idaho Constitution. And as Representative Harris stated, there's 4 or 5 different acts in this bill. And so I just wanted for the record that while I approve of the content, it doesn't set well with the Idaho Constitution. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ms. Davidson. Do we have any questions from the committee? Thanks again for coming and testifying. Appreciate it. Lane, please state your name with that, which I screwed up, and where you're from, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today. My name is Lane McAnally, and I'm a professional educator in the Boise School District, or I was a teacher for 12 years in the Boise School District, and now currently serve as the Idaho Education Association president. On their behalf, I am here to enthusiastically endorse the education funding included in this legislation. This record investment builds on last year's groundbreaking education appropriation, and in a big way. It's a bold step in the right direction for moving Idaho away from the chronic underfunding of public education that has forced hard decisions upon administrators, educators, parents, and voters across the state. There's no better evidence of the importance of this legislation than yesterday's election results. All across the state, school districts asked voters to approve $261 million worth of bonds and special levies for the costs and expenses fundamental to their operation. That's more than $250 million to build new buildings in fast-growing districts and remodel old buildings for better use. There were special levies to help with expenses for paraprofessionals and even bonds to buy and maintain school buses. And by the way, that last one for the buses in Ryrie failed. The fact that these districts were forced to ask voters for these dollars in and of itself shows just how underfunded our schools and our school districts are. Bond measures and special levies should be rare occurrences and used for only extraordinary needs. Instead, they've become a bread and butter funding source for basic operations. The mixed results from yesterday's highlight the striking inequalities this funding system, or lack thereof, has created. Coeur d'Alene, Middleton, and Valley View, all fast-growing districts with buildings bursting with students, saw their ballot measures for new facilities fail. Meanwhile, Blaine County easily passed a facilities levy. On the state government's one of the state government's primary roles, as spelled out in the Idaho Constitution no less, is to create a robust public education system that serves everyone, no matter their background or their zip code. This bill in front of you is an important opportunity to put Idaho's public schools on the right path and provide our students with education they should expect and deserve. Thank you, and I'd stand for any questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the committee? Appreciate you coming, appreciate your testimony. Next, we're going to move to, looks like Mary Ellen, is it Norse? If Mary Ellen's here. And after that, we're gonna have Zach Borman. Mary Ellen here? Oh, sorry, she didn't want to. Zach? I misread that. And after Zach, we'll have Brianna Gibson.
Mr. Chairman and committee members, thank you for the opportunity to talk to you today. My name is Zach Borman. I'm a professional certified educator who was recently appointed the West Ada Education Association by the West Ada Education Association to serve as president. As an educator and a representative of my colleagues, I am in full support of this educational investment. There is simply no way to underestimate how important it is for our students in classrooms. The truth is our students are being shortchanged and have been for some time. Education resources are stretched too thin, classrooms are overcrowded, educators increasingly find themselves simply trying to fend off chaos and exhaustion at the expense of engaging students in learning and building valuable skills. This year, we have middle school classrooms crowded with close to 40 students. A middle school class period, mind you, is only 45 minutes long. Even on a perfect day, that leaves each student with an average of 60 seconds of a teacher's individual attention. This is not a system working the way it should. I recently talked with a teacher who has a student who is a potential danger to themselves and others. They needed more help, so a paraprofessional was brought from another department to fill in. This is a normal circumstance, but due to severe shortages of classified employees, this move potentially left another student with life-threatening health problems without the full support that they need. This is not a system working the way that it should. It's no wonder educators are leaving the profession in unprecedented numbers. The wait may be bearable for a while, but too long or too much, and they will break. It's no wonder educators the West Ada School District must plan for 11,000 new students and 8 new schools in the next decade. These problems will only get worse. This requires immediate action or students will fall through the cracks and talented teachers will leave. This legislation is a good first step forward to mend Idaho's chronic underfunding of our public schools. Maybe it will be used for facility safety or reduced class sizes or mental health or CTE programs, or hopefully it will be used to provide highly competitive salaries that make sure experienced educators are attracted to or stay in Idaho classrooms. Please make this important investment in our students and take strong steps forward towards making real long-term differences in Idaho public schools. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the committee? Thanks again for coming and thanks for your testimony. Next we have Brianna Gibson. And we'll close with Miguel Ligoretta. State your name, where you're from, and the floor is yours.
Hey, Mr. Chairman and committee members.